Well, I really enjoyed the presentation the Monsignor gave and the commentaries that came after it. I think what it did most of all for me, and importantly, was to place the conversation of what science is, what it does, within a larger context of other forms of knowledge and what they do, what they are for, how they fit together. Given that each form of knowledge is partial, this is an important question. I was very happy to hear, too, that both from the side of religion and from the side of science and technology, there was an acknowledgement that these are each partial forms of knowledge. Each one is incomplete. So, why go back to thousands of years ago, picking up the philosophy of Plato, Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, the official philosophy of the Church, the official philosophy of Islam, which is in Avicenna and others? Why do that? Well, because they have actually faced these questions over and over again. They haven't reached the answer or the definitive answer, but they've made the framework within which this conversation makes sense. So I think it's interesting that this kind of conversation is unusual in STS circles, and yet CISPO has brought the scientific representative of the Vatican here in order to reopen that perspective on knowledge, comparative strategies of knowledge, comparative domains of knowledge, and really engage these, which, by the way, was the difficult thing to do. The engagement had some bumps in the road, let's say. So one of her first comments that came right out of the box, the very first question, had to do with how can you, as the representative of the Vatican, of a corrupt institution, of an institution that denies scientific findings, of an institution that has been dealing with pedophilia among its ranks, how can you get up there and say anything about goodness and science? To me, this is a big lapse of basic logic. This is an attack on the person or an institution, or are we looking at the questions of what science and goodness are? It's difficult not to see that there are flaws in the institution of the Church. It's difficult not to see there are flaws in the institution of science and government. But that shouldn't deflect our attention away from the issue of what is science? What is its rightful place? Regardless of its representatives and its sort of imperfect institution, we still have to get to the question, not focus on how bad the institutions are. So once we got over that first statement, we got into some more interesting engagement, but I think the biggest impression that I was left with was that this is a difficult conversation with which we are not familiar, which we are not yet good at, and some review of the history of philosophy, history of science, history of religion, history of theology, the intertwining would really help us out in this moment in time when we're so focused just on technical questions. And even when it comes to the question of how to deal with science, we're treating that as a scientific and technical question, which it isn't.